Hey, welcome back to Found in AI. I'm Cassie Clark, an AI search visibility consultant and the host of the show where we break down what's actually happening in AI search so you don't get left behind. Today is a solo episode and I kind of want to start with something a little meta before we get into it. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I try to answer a Reddit question in the Found in AI LinkedIn edition newsletter. It's real questions from real people pulled straight from communities like our AEO, our SEO, our digital marketing, any of those. Now, this is not really just for the content, but it's more for like an AI search play. Copilot in particular has a habit of citing a single LinkedIn article and then building its entire answer around whatever the practitioner said in that article. So if I'm consistently showing up on LinkedIn with clear, well-structured takes on AI search questions, that's entity authority in action. I'm not just talking about this stuff on the podcast and hoping you take my advice. I'm actually doing it and on my own brand in real time to see what works. This week's LinkedIn edition, well, it was last week, and it kicked off with a question from our AEO. What is the most overrated AEO advice you've heard? It kind of sent me down a rabbit hole, and I'm going to be honest, I was really just trying to read some Secret Lives of Mormon Wives hot takes, and I found this instead. But if you are on that list over on LinkedIn, you already know what I said about it. Meanwhile, Friday's Visibility Report, which is my free weekly newsletter that goes deeper on all things AI search, covered the Semrush 2026 AI Visibility Index. They scaled their study from 2,500 prompts to 126 million US AI search prompts that they analyzed from January through April of this year. I broke down the findings that actually matter for your strategy in that newsletter. If you're not subscribed to the Visibility Report, you can find it at CassieClarkMarketing.com or in the show notes here below. I would love to have you on the list. But I spent all weekend thinking about those things together, mostly because once my brain starts thinking about something, it just swirls and swirls and swirls until it runs out of steam. I think I have ADHD or something. But when you put the Reddit thread next to the Semrush data, they're making the same argument but from completely different directions. And that felt like something that I needed to share on the Found in AI podcast. So today we're mashing them together. The Reddit thread, why the bad advice isn't actually bad advice, and what the 126 million AI search prompts tells us about what actually helps with our content strategy, or sorry, I should say our AI search optimization strategy, because those two things are different. Let's get into it. So I want to start with the Reddit thread because I think it's a really useful entry point for this conversation. The question was, what is the most overrated AEO advice you've heard? Now, there were the usual suspects that showed up in the comments, things like adding FAQs, creating an llms.txt file, and then building a separate page for every single question that your customer might have. Now, I read every single comment in the thread and I came away thinking most of this bad advice isn't actually bad advice. FAQs aren't useless. The llms.txt file isn't a waste of time if you need an AI agent to do something with once it's on your website. A well-structured FAQ page is actually really helpful, and these are all legitimate tactics. But the problem is, and this is the thing that I keep really thinking about, is when the tactic is applied with an SEO mindset, that's when the problems happen. When you add FAQ to a page that lives in a content silo on a site that has 0 third-party mentions for a brand that hasn't established entity authority anywhere beyond its own domain, that FAQ isn't going to do much. The tactic is fine, the foundation just isn't there. When we boil it all down, AI search optimization isn't a checklist, it's a connected system, which is why I corrected myself from saying content strategy to AI search optimization strategy in the opening. When teams treat it like a list of boxes to tick, they're optimizing the wrong layer entirely. I do want to give credit to the Redditors though. Not a single person in that thread said AEO is just SEO rebranded. Now I looked at this question when it was first posted. I mean, that could have happened between now and last Friday, but no one had said that at the time. And that actually gave me a little bit of hope because there has been so much misinformation floating around about this from Google, from SEO influencers, from people who read one buzzword and then immediately wrote a LinkedIn post about it. Like, I hate to say it, but it's true. The conversation is maturing now, but the tactics haven't yet caught up. So let's talk about why those tactics alone are falling short. I've had a handful of conversations over the last month with brands that have made AEO and GEO a top priority. I'm talking senior marketing leaders, content strategists, SEO teams, and in most of those conversations, I'm seeing the same thing happening. The work is being handed off to the SEO team or the content team, or in some cases, one person's been told to just figure out the AI search thing. And I get it. It is so new. It feels like it should go to the SEO team, but it doesn't. And I want to be really clear about this. If your leadership team has assigned AI search optimization exclusively to one team or one channel, there will be gaps that no tactic can close. Here's why. AI engines aren't just reading your website, they are cross-referencing it. I've always described them as nosy aunts. They're going to check what your website says, and then they're going to go verify that story against everything else that they can find about you across the web. That means third-party publishers, review sites, community discussions, all of that. Which means that your strategy has to touch more than one team and more than one channel. And that's a leadership problem, not so much a content team problem. So if you're thinking about this, let me give you a few places to start on how to fix it. The first is building a strategic source of truth. Most brands don't have one in place that defines who they are, what they do, and how they describe it. I found this to be especially true when I worked as CMO for an early stage startup, especially when the product was still in MVP stage, but marketing was already in the works. What happened is that several versions of the brand were sent out to the internet land, but none of them actually reflected who the brand served or who they were becoming. Now, this is super common with early stage startups, especially those still finding their footing in the market. But when that information isn't corrected, or your established brand doesn't have a roadmap that keeps everyone on the same page, AI engines piece together a version of your brand from whatever they can find. Sometimes that version is accurate, or there might be pieces that are accurate, but oftentimes it's just a jumbled mess. The fix is what I call a strategic source of truth. It's a structured entity document that serves as a single maintained record, governing how your brand is described across every piece of content, every press mention, every partner bio, every social profile. It's the same descriptor, same positioning, same language, everywhere. And that also needs a refresh cadence, because freshness is one of those three core signals that AI engines weight. It's the F in the FSA framework. An entity document that hasn't been touched in 18 months isn't really a source of truth, it's just a snapshot of your brand at the time. So if you create one, make sure that you're keeping it updated. The second is getting your foundation, your on-site foundation right. This is separate from the strategic source of truth. Your website still has to do the foundational SEO work. You still need that structured content. You need those comparison pages, clear definitions, and FAQs. All of that plays a role. Just don't expect it to drive AI citations on its own. AI engines look for corroboration across sources. Like, your site is the foundation, but those third-party mentions are the amplifier. You need both of those for this to work. The third is designing for third-party mentions, not just those backlinks. Now, the smarter play here is a deliberate publisher partnership strategy, contributing to third-party sites, showing up in industry newsletters, that kind of thing. You'll get the backlink, which is great for SEO, but more importantly, you'll build a cross-platform signal that actually influences AI retrieval. And the fourth is eliminating those silos. When PR, content, SEO, and leadership are all operating on different narratives, AI engines pick up on the inconsistency. Consistency of language and positioning across channels is not one of those nice to have things. Like, it is absolute core infrastructure, and it is the thing that holds all of this together. So that's the strategic argument. I wanted to lay that out ahead of time before we really dig into the data, because the Semrush 2026 AI Visibility Index dropped a couple weeks ago at this point, and it's doing a whole lot of work for us. They expanded their original study from 2,500 prompts to 126 million US AI search prompts that they analyzed from January through April 2026. This is one of the most in-depth pieces of AI visibility research I have looked at this year, and I want to walk through the findings that I think matter most for your strategy. Finding number 1, mentions are not citations, and that gap is a little bit bigger than we all think. Now, being mentioned in an AI-generated answer does not mean a brand's own website is cited as a supporting source. On Gemini, the overlap between mentioned brands and cited domains can be as low as 30%. A brand can show up by name in an AI-generated answer and have 0 of its own pages cited as the supporting evidence. That answer, though, is coming from somewhere else. I saw this firsthand last week when doing a preliminary audit for a brand. When I ran the queries that they wanted to be the answer for, the AI answer mentioned them by name, but the supporting sources were almost entirely third-party publishers. Their own site barely registered. Now, this is exactly what I'm calling the publisher intercept problem. Your brand appearing in an answer and your content powering that answer are two completely different things, and you need to compete on both fronts. Earning enough authority to be mentioned for, just to recap, that's entity building and that third-party coverage and consistent co-occurrence of your name alongside the descriptor, and creating structured, credible content that AI platforms can actually actually cite, that's the structure and authority components of the FSA framework. If you're focused only on your own website, you're really only fighting half the battle. Finding 2, your industry determines how hard this is. Now, I know that sounds doom and gloom, but the Semrush data makes it clear that not all competitive landscapes are equal in AI search. For example, in news and media, the most 3 visible brands accounted for 82.9% of total category visibility. In consumer electronics, the top 3 represented over 76%, but in finance, the top 3 only accounted for 41.4%, and industrial, it was something like 42.2%. Now, here's my read on all of this. The concentrated categories are concentrated because those giants already have a massive cross-web footprint. They are absolutely everywhere. Their content, their brand, their third-party mentions, it's everywhere you look. And this makes sense that they are the ones that are dominating because AI systems learned from the internet that those brands were already dominating. So of course they're going to be mentioned more often. But that's not a reason to give up. It's just context for your timeline if you're in one of these categories. If you're in a highly concentrated category, gaining visibility is going to be the long game, but it's not impossible. If you're in finance or industrial or something with a similar distribution of the category, you have a real window right now. A well-executed AI visibility program can make measurable gains faster in those spaces because there's just less competition. The key here is just knowing your category and then setting your expectations accordingly. Finding 3, the universal 36 tells you exactly what to target. What I mean by that is only 36 global brands maintain top 100 visibility across all 4 major platforms. Those platforms that were tested: ChatGPT, Gemini, Google AI Mode, and Google AI Overviews. Yep. Lots of Google in this one, but those were tested every single month of the study period through January to April or whatever it was. Now, the Universal 36 includes YouTube, Google, Reddit, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, Walmart, Disney, and Nintendo. Now, I am not telling you that as trivia, something that you can go win Jeopardy with next week if they ask about it, but consider that more of a blueprint. Look at what those brands have in common. Reddit, YouTube, Wikipedia. Those sites are destinations where AI systems go to verify what they already think they know about a brand. So if your brand is being discussed in those spaces accurately alongside the right descriptors, you're reinforcing the AI signals engines use to categorize you. This is why entity building is not just an on-site SEO task, it's a cross-web presence problem. The 4th finding is that third-party coverage is now brand infrastructure. Like, I keep hitting on this one recently because it's so important. The Semrush data includes a case study of Patagonia that's really instructive here when you break it down. Patagonia maintained an AI visibility score of 79 to 80 throughout the study period, and their visibility was supported by consistent descriptions across sources, including Outdoor Gear Lab, REI, Switchback Travel, Gear Junkie, and our favorite, Reddit. Patagonia isn't appearing there because their website is particularly well optimized. I'm sure it is, but that's not the reason. They're appearing because a consistent story about who they are and what they stand for has been told by other people across platforms for a long time. That's entity authority at scale. For most brands, this is the hardest shift to make because it requires thinking beyond owned content. Guest appearances, digital PR, expert quotes, participating in the communities that your community members are active in. Those are the things that help AI systems learn whether your brand is real and trustworthy enough to cite. Okay, last finding from the Semrush data, finding number 5, the number that should really settle that SEO versus GEO debate. I have been saying this for a while, but I'm going to let the data speak here. Among organizations that fully integrate SEO and AI visibility into a unified workflow, 81% reported increased traffic or leads from AI platforms. Now, among the organizations that manage the 2 areas separately, only 36% reported the same result. That's 81% versus 36%. It's kind of a big jump in numbers, and it's the difference between a strategy that compounds and one that just kind of hits a wall and stalls. GEO is not a replacement for SEO. It's not a separate channel that you bolt on after the content team is done with their real work. And the brands that are winning in AI search are the ones that are treating search holistically. It's the same content, same brand signals, same authority building work, measured across both traditional and AI search surfaces. If your SEO team and your AI search strategy are separate work streams right now, that 81 versus 36 is the number that you take to your leadership. Before I wrap up this episode, I'm going to speak directly to a segment of this audience for a minute. Based on what I'm seeing in the analytics and based on some of the messages that I'm getting, a chunk of the people that listen to the show and read the newsletter are senior content strategists and content leads. Now, if that is you, if you're here and you're staying informed and thinking about where this is going, good on you for recognizing what's happening, maybe even before the rest of your team does. But I'm hearing the same version of a frustration pretty often, and it's, I get it, but I can't move the organization. So let me offer you this. I hear you. I absolutely hear you, but start with what you can control. That might be advocating internally for building a strategic source of truth document. You could frame it as a brand consistency project if AI search isn't landing with the leadership team yet. That's a completely legitimate entry point, because if is a brand consistency project. It just also happens to be the foundation of your AI visibility strategy. Audit which tactics you can implement without sign-off. That could be maybe you restructure your content to make it easier for AI engines to read. Maybe that's adding in those FAQs or entity consistency in your own publishing. There is real work that you can do right now at the content level that actually matters. It just might not feel like it's doing immediate impact, but when leadership finally does get on board, and they will because the data is getting too loud to ignore, you'll already have the foundation built and the receipts to prove it. So let's bring this all together. The Reddit thread showed us the tactics most teams are using aren't wrong. They're just being applied with an SEO mindset inside of a strategy that was built for a different era of search. And then the Semrush data showed us that mentions are not citations, that category concentration shapes your timeline, that third-party coverage is now brand infrastructure, and that organizations integrating SEO and AI visibility together outperform those that don't by more than double. The through line through all of this that I keep harping on is that AI search visibility is a whole organization problem. You cannot SEO your way into it. You cannot content team your way into it. It absolutely requires cross-functional strategy, consistent language across channels, third-party presence, and a leadership team that understands what's at stake here. That's the case, and the data now backs it up. If you want to understand where your brand actually stands across AI platforms before making any changes to your strategies, that's exactly what the AI Search Visibility Audit covers. You can find it at CassieClarkMarketing.com or in the show notes below. If you found this episode useful, I would absolutely love it forever if you left a review. It helps more people find the show, and the more people we get thinking about AI visibility as a whole, the better off we'll be. I'm Cassie Clark, an AI Search Visibility Consultant. I'll see you Thursday for news updates. Until then, stay visible.